So, good morning. This is VE Day in the UK, and we have the most fabulous Carolyn Stafford Bell sporting her lovely hairstyle. She has serenaded us this morning, hasn't she? And of course, we have got the wonderful, the much loved, and in demand Mr. David Buckler, and myself, little old Aneesh de Vos, sat in the corner. I literally am sat in the corner in my sitting room. So today we are looking at perfection. We've had a little chat prior to this and looking at different places where it came from. I'm going to be looking, well, not just me, but I'm going to be looking at this perfect society that we live in. And David, you had two very, as ever with David, these lovely profound comments that he brings up in his beautiful soft manner. So David, I'm going to pass it over to you, and Caroline and I are going to butt in, aren't we, Caroline?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Please do, or I'll be coming from a rather lonely place.
And that perfection might come up.
You think? Yeah. Yeah, as someone, I guess, who has struggled with the thought of perfection, I wondered where its origins were, and I think we usually get back to ACEs, and they're very relevant, I think, to this particular subject. For example, when we look at adverse childhood experiences, I guess we are, to some degree, encouraged by our parents, as parents should. But I was thinking in terms of that encouragement moving towards chastisement for not achieving, perhaps. On the other hand, if we're overpraised as children, the feeling that it is accepted by ourselves that we are what we can achieve perfection because we're constantly praised for it. And I'm sort of stuck in the middle right now thinking, which one is it? Is it both? And these are theories of mine. I just wanted to bounce that around and see where that goes.
Sounds like that all of them really, when you think about the different parts of yourself, and 1 minute you're feeling like this and the next minute you're feeling like that, and it's owning all of them, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
in that given moment. And you speak about overachieving. For me personally, to sort of fit in with those family structures and those conditions of work, I was best positioned to create an external persona of underachieving because that wasn't recognised. So if I was excelling, then that would become an issue. So if I was underachieving or being stupid, then that was recognised. So that, I got my praise really for underachieving, which didn't fit with that internal struggle of, wanting to achieve and growth and coming to a point now in my career and my learning journey, it's reminding myself I am good enough for me. Perfection is somebody else's fantasy. It's not my fantasy. That I'm myself in my own self-image, good enough in any given moment, and so is everybody else. Does perfectionism exist?
Yeah, and so if it does exist, isn't there this thing where I always say to people, I am perfectly imperfect, because I know myself with my own perfectionism, and it is a real bugger for me tell you one of my little stories. I have got 50 dresses upstairs. Anybody that knows me will know I'm in a pair of boots, a pair of jeans, and you're lucky if I've ironed my top. Okay, so so upstairs I have 50 dresses. Now, it's been a collection that has grown. I always had maybe 5 or 6 in my wardrobe, which I never wore. But this collection, and I'm going to call it a collection, has grown since my mum died in 2013. Now, my mum and I had a challenged relationship. And as a little girl, I still had these bloody curls. So I had these curls, and she dressed me in all of these handmade clothes that she made for me. And I was a beast, but I loved little beasts in the garden, and I used to love earthworms. Favourite thing. I was a little scientist then. I used to put them in the Maxwell house coffee jars because I wanted to know, because my mum said, oh, they make their own babies, they grow their own, or something like that. She didn't speak like that, but still. So I put them in there at the age 3, 2 weeks later, took them out. Oh yes, there were more. It was not a good condition of an experiment, everybody. I must point this out because I didn't just put one in each one. I was 3. And at lunchtime, my siblings came home from school. I'd get my worms out of my pockets because somebody would say, oh, what have you been doing today? I was like, I got these worms. Because what my mum did was, in the end, she knew I was going to still dig in the garden in these incredibly pretty dresses. So she made me little aprons with a big pocket on for me to keep my worms in. So you see what sort of little beast I was, okay?
Sounds perfect.
Well, I was going with it. Why she didn't let me wear my trousers, I don't know, but we're not going down that road. So that's my mum's stuff. So when she died, it became this thing for me because I associated wearing a dress with being a good girl. Good girls wear dresses. There's that perfectionism that in a million years, I was never going to reach. I was 4 when I saved up for my first pair of jeans. I asked for money for my birthday and I never came out of them. So there was that constant that I felt this disappointment because I hear what you're saying, Carolyn, that kind of reflection in yourself that you're not quite meeting the expectations. So you almost level yourself down, don't you? There's the American psychologist, Dr. Phil McGraw, that talks about leveling. And it's very pertinent in families because you want to fit in. We covered this, didn't we, about this attachment and fitting in when we spoke about humour and trauma. And you want to fit in. So I literally have these 50 dresses. So my daughter said to me about, probably about 18 months ago now, what's going on with the dresses? I said, I've obviously got a thing. So I must say, I went through them all and I gave 5 to a charity shop because it was stood at about 52. I then brought 3 more. I bought 3 more. I'm aware of my issue with my dresses. I am aware that the likelihood of me ever wearing them is very, very low. But I keep them there. And so I know there is still part of me that thing. And when I buy it, I think, yeah, and I'll wear that when. I don't go out. I'm quite boring. So I'll wear that when. So even when you're 50, you can still have that feeling.
I resonate with that so much because, there's parts of the wardrobe that it's like, oh, I love that. And I remember how it looked in the changing room. But it needs to be that special perfect day to wear it. And it's sits there, gathering dust. Well, not dust in the water, gathering dust. And waiting for that perfect day. And then that perfect day comes that you think, you try the dress on and it doesn't look as if you had imagined it. So then you don't do that and you go back to your comfort state, be it your jeans and your unironed top. But
you never wear an unironed top, and neither does David. So are you saying that, because I don't even try the dresses on. No, I buy them online and I put them on when I get they get home, when when it arrives, but I don't even go out into changing rooms. I'm not going down that road, because that for me is too girly, and I'm just not there in the way I feel about
I'm taking you shopping.
David, are you coming?
Getting you in changing rooms.
But do you think that when you put it on in the changing room, that your concept is this will be great for the perfect day, but when the perfect day comes, of course it's not perfect, so therefore the dress doesn't fit your mentality? Yeah. It's not that the dress doesn't fit you or look as gorgeous as you always do, but is that because it's that hitting of that realization? And that's a little bit what David was talking about, in a way, that kind of realization that it's not quite as perfect as we were going to think it was.
It shifts from that fantasy view, doesn't it? Fantasy, reality. And like I say, perfectionism, I think, sits in that fantasy head.
Yeah. What do you think, David? I mean, I'm not sure. What have you got in your wardrobe? Would you like to share?
Any dresses?
It's quite ironic that we get on this subject, because I was just thinking as you were talking, I think I've got something like an extreme form of I don't know, of me in different guises. It's almost like configurations are extreme with me. For example, if I go to work, I've got to look like I'm going to work. And if I'm at home, it's still got to have an air of feeling smart, comfortable. But work is a different thing. I feel like I'm ready for work if I've got a jacket on, for example, and a shirt, and that works for me. Although what I do really doesn't demand that much of dressing up, if you like. I mean, I like to match, for example, the tutors, lecturers at college. They're usually suited and booted, and I think apart from conforming, I don't think I'd feel comfortable if I just went in jeans and a t-shirt, whatever. And again, I was thinking as you were talking, my wardrobe, coming back to my wardrobe, I have, contrary to popular beliefs, Vicky has about 25% and I have about 75% of a wardrobe. And don't get me on the subject to shoes, because she'll butt in and she'll give me a lecture on getting rid of some of the, don't know how many I've got, pairs of shoes.
Wow.
And again, I've got shoes and probably worn about 6. I get you. I might be unusual from a bloke's point of view, but I relate to what you're saying.
Can I just relate to the fact that, and I'm going to be dead honest, here is Aneesh.
And I believe I know where it comes from. I mean, again, it's a personal story. And I only...
You're freezing a lot today, David.
First therapy way back when. And
I think we lost David for a moment.
Yeah, he's frozen.
He has frozen. So we are going to come back to him, because we do just video these as we go along. So Carolyn, I'm going to share with you while David is coming back, because I know he will, that today, talking about David's work clothes, up here is Aneesh ready for recording. Honest to God, here are my sweats.
And it's playing the part. Yeah. When I heard him say about, going to lectures or anything, playing a part, going to work, putting the jacket on, it's, I want to say layers. It isn't. It's almost like, I won't answer the door without lipstick on, because my lips literally have no colour. They just mould into my face, and then my teeth come along. And, I won't answer the door without lipstick on.
Or polygraph.
We're not going on that again. That is amazing. It's my saviour. And my inch of perfectionism to, but it's about playing that part. And you know, you talked about fitting in.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, so me, I'm going to this group, whether it be client work, whether it be peers, whether it be friends, family. And it's almost like a pre-conscious thought of preparing yourself for playing that part.
So
and that creates a lot of anxiety for some people, that playing that part, that fitting in.
yeah.
And that goes back to the, you know, previous experience within that group, with that person, with that family member, with that certain friend.
So do you feel, because you know, David has alluded to ACEs, and we are hoping that David comes back at some stage, but David is alluding to ACEs, you know, these adverse childhood experiences. But do you think that across society in general, and I'm going to come into here, is that this level of perfection, and it seems to be either or. I'm not sure how much acceptance there is just in the middle. You know, even when we go and order just a drink or something, you know, there's this almost this expectancy that the waiter has to be perfect, the drink has to be perfect. And I just wonder how much of that media driven part of society has you know, started to demand that everything looks like the picture. Do you see what I mean? And the reason that I'm carrying on with this today, Carolyn and David, is because I'm absolutely proving the fact that we're still going to show this, even though it's not bloody perfect. So David, I'm so glad you're back. We're going with it because it's not perfect. And we want to really make that point of, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just kind of talking about we're going with the flow because it's VE Day, but we're just talking about that concept of how this perfect society has arisen, and that it's either or. There seems to be nothing in between, and we wonder if that's also the marketing of how we're meant to be in society, you know, because it's like you say, it's not always adverse childhood experiences. I know plenty of people with perfection that don't come in with a big trauma background. So I'm just wondering, where do you sit on that, David? Obviously you nipped off and changed your shoes.
Yeah, very nice they are too. Yeah, I got to a point of explaining that, there was a way I had to be turned out, and I had to look after clothes, etc., etc. Because my father hadn't long left the army, and had that, I guess, indoctrination, as we do. You know, everything had to be folded that way, shoes had to be shiny, trousers had to be creased, shirts had to be ironed, etc., etc. And I get that, you know, but I think it's the other side of the coin is when I realised I was a constant disappointment, that those things had new meaning, and there was an emphasis on doing it better to prove, to get this affirmation that I was worth something. And that presented itself later on as having to be the best at most things, which obviously is impossible.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah, thank you for saying so. And I'll go back to, I mentioned briefly about early therapy for various things, which we'll no doubt get into as this continues, this series continues, and long may it last. Is that a simple thing like someone saying to me, when you get up first thing in the morning, you look in the mirror, why don't you tell yourself that you're good enough? And I thought, that's crazy, that's never going to work.
I do, every morning.
Yeah, and thank you. And over a period of time, I started to believe that I am good enough. Yeah.
But how?
And I don't have to overachieve.
But so how does that good enough? Because I believe I'm good enough with what I've got at that moment, and whether or not I've shown my sweatpants on the recording, David, to prove that I am a scruffy devil. You're gonna love it when you watch this back. So how does that connect in, that being good enough in a society that is, and you look at it right now, and whatever our views are on politics, on any of this situation of pandemic, you look at it right now that there is a real rhetoric of it's got to be perfect. Of course, it's got to be really, really good because we're in a pandemic and questions should be asked and people should be held accountable. But it's this fast, quick, oh, it's not perfect, I'm going to jump out, before people have even found their facts.
Yeah, I think it relates very strongly to this society we're in, which demands instant gratification. And yeah, I want it yesterday. You know, it's a mindset that's been growing over a period. I don't know. I've recognised it over 20 years. I put it down to this instant communication that we're supposed to enjoy, but has ended up being very often a burden.
So this perfectionism that has seeped in, are you saying that you view it as almost, there's a normalcy about it? It's almost like an expectancy. And should we then look back at ourselves and say, hang on a minute, if your coffee from such and such little cafe doesn't look exactly like the picture, is that really something to argue about? Is it that too quick off the mark?
I think you're right. I just think we're very quick to criticise and very slow to forgive.
Is that a projection though? If you're very easy within yourself and a very sort of laid back personality, the waiter or waitress, I don't know, spills a bit of coffee out of your cup into the saucer, it's not a problem. But some people may possibly overreact to that, and it be a real problem, or something isn't quite right at the table, or but we are all fallible, and it's acceptance of that in other people, but also within ourselves. And when David said get up in the morning and I'm good enough, it is that acceptance that we just are what we are. We can't do very much about it. We might have fantasies for how we want to be, and very much this current situation, it's very much out of our control. It's a global pandemic. I mean, it's a new virus with no vaccine. How can we be expected to sort of get it right?
I think you've hit the nail. I think you made a very, very valid point, Carolyn. We expect science to achieve. We live in a world where your phone's out of date in 6 months. We've so much reliance on science and technology, and it's not getting us out of this as fast as we would like, is it?
Exactly. I mean, I remember when my dad was unwell. I think I mentioned it before. He was dying of cancer, and I said about when he sort of made a bit of a comedy about it. But he was very accepting that, the doctors and the nurses was doing as best they could, and not expecting him to be cured and be rid of the cancer. They would do the best that they could do.
Yeah.
And, luckily, we as a family had 4 years with him, from diagnosis to him actually dying. And those four years hold so much value. But he didn't expect, he sort of accepted that you know, the doctors will do the best that they can do.
Yeah.
And whereas, you know, other input, respecting confidentiality, you know, had this expectation of the doctors to cure him, to you know, invest and do absolutely everything, and every slight mistake that they made, which, you know, they did, they're going to make mistakes, they're not robots.
Yeah.
You know, I went in for one operation in 2001, ended up being 11 operations because of things that went a little bit wrong. You know, but they're not gods. I'm grateful to be alive. No, very, very grateful. It's, you know, it's really changed my outlook on life. And yeah, you know, the scars tell a story. You know, a patchwork quilt, when I go abroad and I put a bikini on and people say, oh my God, what happened to you? I was like, I've lived. It's just, you know, this is me. I'm not going to change it. There's the scars of my life, you know. And when I'm lying on that slab and with a bit of string tied around my toe, saying who I am, you know, my body tells the story.
So in that, I mean, I always love what Carolyn comes out with.
I don't know what I'm coming out with.
Well, it's VE Day.
Yeah, I'm quite pleased you're still around, Carolyn.
Oh, thank you.
Definitely pleased about that.
Wouldn't be quite the same without me, would it?
It definitely wouldn't, and it wouldn't be perfect, and that's what we don't want. So, in that kind of like that acceptance. What about, I mean, that is a massive experience, isn't it, Carolyn? You know, you went in for one operation, you come back 11 operations later, thank God I'm alive.
In a 6-year period.
Yeah, so I get that, because that's again, it's that polar opposite, isn't it? That's almost that extreme. What about those? And Carolyn, I know this is one of your things, so I'm going to hand it to you, but what about those micro things? What about the micro parts of that? I know, I introduced that well. So what about the micro parts of that? How, you know, just small things. And that goes into what David says about that parent who, for their own reason, and this is never for me a blaming game on parents.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So that parent that does, you know, over criticize, you know, like my mum, bless her, you know, you've always got to look nice, you've always got to look nice. And then bless her, she had me, 4th child. She must have thought, my life, where did you come from? Send her back. So, so, you know, what about those? And they are micro. They are, Carolyn, what are they? They are micro.
Aggression.
They are
microaggressions, which have a cumulative effects, which lead to psychological trauma in the long term.
Ta-da!
So I'm going to say over to you two, because I know that you two have got lots to say about this, and I won't butt in. She says, I'm going to be perfect sat here in the corner.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you know, you were speaking about you father there, Carolyn, and yeah, I had a picture of the gentleman accepting the help that he was getting without criticism, because everyone was doing their best. And that's a mouthful, really. How often you said that I'm not going to get on this person's case because they're doing their best. Do you think, and this is a whole new probably session, it might well be connected to resilience, and I'm not going to bring age into it at all, and I'm not going to criticize my parents because it sounded like it before. I mean, they do their best with what they have. And that sounds patronizing as well. But I'm coming back to the fact that I think previous generations and this is going to get me shot down, I guess, in all sorts of ways, were more resilient, are more resilient, accept things as they are, almost to the point where it's detrimental to their own well-being. So maybe there's a case for being resilient, being accepting, and being a bit shouty at the same time.
Whenever the need takes you, you know. I think it's that momentous state that you're in. I don't know if I'm using the right words there, but you know, it's the position that you're in, whether it's a, what do they call it, a bad Monday, a sad Monday, a blue Monday, or a happy Friday, you know, or a calm Sunday. You know, I think days have certain feelings attached to them. You know, Monday, you're like, ooh, but then, you know, some are ready to actually go and face the week. It's like returning from a holiday, isn't it? And getting back into it. I think it's the state that you're in, which is very individual, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
In that moment. So you know, my father's state was very, you know, he knew the cancer was in control. He wasn't in control. The doctors wasn't in control. You know, and at this current moment in time, the virus is in control, and you know, there's feelings of helplessness. And you know, we are a vast array of people from one end of the scale to the other, and you know, we're all perfect, we're all fallible, we're not robots, and we all deal with this in very different ways, and some feel very hopeless, and you know, that can then, depending on that state of mind maybe at that time, can bring someone down into the depths of depression and sort of giving in. It brings fear and anxiety, and then we don't feel perfect because, you know, we're not doing anything. And then there's others that, you know, are learning a different language, or you know, I've ordered a paint by numbers. I don't know where it is. By the time it comes, we'll be out of lockdown. I won't have time to actually do it. But and there's a little bit of anxiety around that, because you know, the advert on Facebook for these paint by numbers are absolutely beautiful. I'm thinking, I don't think I'm going to produce anything like that. So I've gone for quite a simple image, which is going to be my sort of lockdown memory. And you know, that won't be perfect, but it will be the best that I can do. Like my VE bunting, it isn't perfect. My red felt tip is running out, so I've just done squiggly lines, but it doesn't matter. It's fine. It's perfect to me, because you know, it's the intention that I set out when I started doing it. I thought, oh, the felt tip isn't very strong. Oh well, just have to go with it. But it's homemade, and I'm making some scones after this. So I've sent my husband now to get some clotted cream, because we're having a bit of a tea party in the close, with social distancing, of course, dragging the barbecue round, and I'm going to make some scones. So, but they won't be perfect. They won't look like. I've been baking and handing it round to the neighbours, and then a neighbour last week said, "Oh, do you like sourdough?" I said, "Sourdough bread," and I was like, "Oh, yes." So he brought this sourdough bread round. It was like, oh my God, this has actually come from the bakery. This is perfect. I thought, I can't send my baking anymore, because mine doesn't look perfect. You know, there's a little bit burnt in the corner, or you know, too much sugar on one side, or it's a bit uneven. But this circular bread, and had a really pretty swirl and a nice dusting of flour. It was the most delicious bread. And
how did you send your cakes? How did you? Because obviously, people that are watching, you know, how do you find the resilience? How do you send out your cakes when they look a little bit, by comparison, as if, you know, you made?
Well, I was quite happy with them until I saw the bread.
Yes. So how do you reach over that? How do you come up and out of that?
I think, oh, bugger it. You know, it's all in the taste. my food tastes delicious. Might not look great, but it tastes delicious. And people always comment on the food tastes delicious, but they never comment on the presentation.
Is it about to move away from this constant perfectionism, that we move away from that societal perfectionism, of that marketed perfectionism, that everything's got to look like this, everything's got to be like this, and then kind of go underneath it a little bit to find out actually who made that cake, who got up in the morning and shined their shoes, what was it that they did to get to where they are today? Do you know what I mean? What was it that they...
Is that perfection for them, or is it for us? Where is that perfection head coming from? Is it perfection to fit in? Is it perfection of our own sort of self-image from those ACEs, conditions of worth? Are we playing the part to fit in with others? What about our own acceptance?
So it's almost like a chicken and an egg situation, isn't it? Are we doing it to fit in, or are we doing it because it's part of actually who we are originally? I mean, I know you can never answer that question, but fully. But David, I just wonder, when, because you've spoken about when you were in therapy, and somebody said, have you thought about looking in the mirror and saying, well, you're good enough today, type thing. Where do you think it fits in? Is it that this, is it this need to fit in that these perfectionisms arise from? Because don't forget, often that critical parent is because they could have quite easily been criticized themselves, or because this pressure to have this amazing genius child, or whatever is important to them, this amazing beautiful child or perfectly dressed child, etc.
Perfect. They're perfect because they're your child.
Well, they are.
Think of the beautiful baby competitions. You know that, Aneesh, because I sent you a link. And my granddaughter, her mother entered this baby competition, best smile. I mean, oh my gosh, it was a smile to die for. My granddaughter, it's like she's gonna win. She actually didn't win, but she won in our hearts because she's perfect to us.
Yeah, but how do you? And she is. I mean, that photo is gorgeous, and I go to her. But But what I'm saying is, how does that then fit into society? Because within your own family, and then you get up, and like you go to school, and it gets wider and it gets wider and wider. So where do we stop and say, do you know what, Aneesh, it's okay that you've got 50 dresses upstairs, love. It's absolutely fine that they're there. Therapy.
It's that personal development. It's that personal journey. It's therapy. Time to reflect, to be with yourself, to meaning making, and making sense of who you actually are, and moving that, they call it the locus of evaluation, moving that from an external state to an internal state where you evaluate yourself, free from judgment.
Do you not think also, though, that just as society, let's temper it down a little bit? It's okay that I'm wearing my sweatpants today. Do you know what I mean? Is there not that, as we are now changing the way that we connect, and we are very far from perfect in what is happening in the world right now because of different things that have happened. Can that perfectionism itself, I mean, it must be tired. Can it not just have a break from this? Because like we've shown in this show today, the internet's not perfect. Is it not now time that, again, it's from this little gifting barbed wire from this pandemic, that it comes out that in actual fact, it ain't perfect, and we should stop expecting it to be. Give ourselves a break. And that's more of a collective concept. David, what do you think? You're looking pensive.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you were saying, and reflecting on what Carolyn was saying. I mean, how do you pass on the essence of what we see as self-awareness? Carolyn's talking about therapy, and wholeheartedly agree. Should we all have our dose of looking into ourselves with the help of someone else? I think
Unity, isn't it?
Yeah. Can you do it on a community level? Yeah. It's done in small groups. But the pressures are always going to be there. You're always going to be looking at a screen of perfection. You're sold perfection. You have to be perfect to fit in. I don't know how you counter that, but I know from a personal point of view that the more self-aware you are, the more you can get past that. The less influence it has upon the way you live your life. How you put that out there.
And like you say, you can't get that self-awareness, put it in a jar and give it to someone and sell it.
No, I wish, and that would be putting a lot of us out of a job. But hey ho, I've always said that I'm in a job that I'd rather not be doing because there should be no need for it. But hey ho.
Yeah. And you know, I had a really interesting conversation last night. I was teaching counselling students, and we're working on a unit at the moment, diversity unit. So as an introduction to the unit, they've been working on cultural identity and getting them to sort of examine themselves, revisit that, have a look, and you know, match it to the curriculum really. And it was really interesting. So we'd gone into groups and I was listening in on conversations. So I made some notes, and when we came back to the whole group at the end of the night, I'd reflected on what one of the students had said about their sort of counselling training journey and how much they sort of unpacked their beliefs and repacked them and then unpacked them again and repacked them, and you know, that sort of time, given that opportunity. So you know, I said to them, because obviously I teach them through all the levels, so when they began at level 2, I said, how many of you remember on the opening night when you come for your induction, how much do you remember me saying, so if you decide you'd like to become a counsellor and work through the levels and get to level 4, you may want to think about making a decision now, because when you reach level 4, you will not be the same person. You will be different.
Yeah.
I said, how many of you believed it? And I can remember lots of students challenged it. It's like, well, I'm not going to change. I'm just going to learn a bit of theory. But actually, and I said, okay, so what would you say to your level 2 self now? You know, and one of them, it was classic. It was like, it's going to be a really rocky road, but I would do it again 10 times over to be where I am now. And you know, and that just melted my heart. It was so lovely.
So are we as our small collective in our discussion, looking at our time today, are we saying that, you know what, we're probably never going to get rid of perfectionism, there's always going to be a little bit sat on your back, whatever, but kind of maybe this time, because we've all been held back in, and the only person we've really had to be with is ourselves, because there's not been that distraction of the outside. And I'm not negating anything that's gone on in families, but there has been this extreme sense of self in this as well, and where am I in this world now, and who am I in this world? So are we saying that in actual fact, perhaps, just perhaps, having this time of lockdown has given us time to really start reevaluating what's important? And I think when you start looking at what's important, perfectionism is bound to come in. And maybe it's just a time just to give yourself a little bit more time of reflection to say, does it really matter? Does it really have to be that perfect? And also, in response to somebody else, you know, do they really have to be that perfect? So we're going to bring in my old friend as usual, but we're going to bring in compassion, aren't we? Because perfectionism needs compassion to coat it, to soften it, because perfection is part of our parts, isn't it? You know, David lives in his shoes, his perfectionism, and, you know, looking right for the job. Carolyn, in her amazing teeth, lipstick wardrobe, because she's got mine in that little collection of dresses which will go nowhere. I'm very happy with them in my wardrobe, but isn't it about that? That's part of us, and that came there because something made us feel that we had to be that. And so it's about coating that in compassion and saying, do you know what, Aneesh, it's absolutely okay that you've got 50 dresses upstairs, darling. It's absolutely fine.
Owning it. It's yours.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
Own it.
Yeah, it's my little place of perfection. I never try them on. It's my place of perfection. And you know what? That's okay for me to feel like that. So it's that kind of reflecting, isn't it? I'm not expecting you to be perfect. We didn't expect David to have a perfect internet connection today. Do you know what I mean? And equally, I'm not expecting myself to be perfect in this. I think, Carolyn, earlier at the beginning of the conversation, I called you Caroline, which I clearly wasn't. I didn't back. So I don't know about you guys. I think that we have produced today a perfectly imperfect characteristic of all three of us conversation. What do you think?
It has been imperfect. All the conversation we've had have had their qualities in not being perfect. I hope that comes across. And even getting it wrong is okay. I do it all the time. And I couldn't have said that to myself 20 years ago. You know, that would have put me in the wrong place, having to admit that I got that wrong. Yeah. Very tough thing to do.
I hear you. Carolyn, I believe that you're going to send us out with something quite wonderful, because I saw you nip up and grab something from your child.
I thought we would all have a go in a very imperfect way, but in fitting with today's theme of VE Day. I thought we would have a little sing out, because it is very apt. We will meet again. We don't know where, we don't know when.
Well, carry on, guys, because you gave us a great intro before we came on air. They actually did give us a great intro. So I'm just going to smile because I'm choosing the corner today.
No, you need to sing too. We want your imperfect contribution too.
You're outrageous, Stafford Bell. Begin us then.
I forgot the words.
Now you're on the spot.
We'll meet again. Don't know when.
Don't know when.
But I know we'll meet again some sunny day. And we're out.